I was the neighbor who never decorated for Christmas, until a widow with 3 kids asked me to help hang their lights and showed me what home really means. I used to be the house that stayed dark during Christmas. No lights, no wreath, no inflatable Santa in the yard. While my neighbors transformed their homes into winter wonderlands, my house remained stubbornly ordinary, just bare walls and an unlit porch. I told myself I was practical, that Christmas decorations were wasteful, that I didn't need to participate in the neighborhood's decorating competition. But the truth was simpler and sadder. I was alone, and decorating for an audience of 1 felt pointless. Then came December 10th, 3 years ago. I was carrying groceries from my car when I heard a small voice behind me. "Excuse me, mister." I turned to find a little girl, maybe 7 years old, standing at the edge of my driveway. Behind her stood a woman I recognized as my new neighbor from across the street, the one who'd moved in 2 months earlier with 3 kids and no husband. "Can you help us hang our Christmas lights?" the girl asked. "Our dad used to do it, but he's in heaven now." The request. Her name was Sophie. Her mother was Rebecca. The other 2 kids were twins, Emma and Noah, age 5. Rebecca looked embarrassed as she walked over. "Sophie, we talked about this. You can't just ask strangers." "It's okay," I heard myself say. The words surprised me as much as they surprised her. "I can help." Rebecca's relief was visible. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose, it's just... The boxes are heavy and the ladder makes me nervous, and the kids really wanted lights this year. It's our first Christmas without..." Her voice caught. "It's fine," I said quickly, not wanting to witness her breakdown. "I'll come by tomorrow afternoon." That night, I lay awake wondering what I'd gotten myself into. I hadn't hung Christmas lights in 15 years, not since my wife left. Not since this house stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like just a place I slept. But I'd made a promise to a little girl who'd lost her father, so I'd keep it. The first afternoon, I showed up at Rebecca's house at 2 o'clock the next day with my ladder and tool belt. The kids were in the front yard, bundled in mismatched winter coats, practically vibrating with excitement. "You came," Sophie squealed, running up to me. "Said I would, didn't I?" The boxes of decorations were in the garage, 6 large plastic containers labeled in neat handwriting. Lights, ornaments, outdoor, tree, stockings, misc. Everything organized, everything preserved from a life that used to include a father. Rebecca showed me their vision. Lights along the roofline, a wreath on the door, luminarias lining the walkway. Nothing extravagant but warm, welcoming. As I climbed the ladder and started stringing lights, the kids sat on the lawn and watched like I was performing surgery. They pointed out every missed spot, every crooked section, every opportunity to add just a few more. And something strange happened. For the first time in years, I felt useful. The stories. While I worked, Rebecca brought out hot chocolate. We sat on her front steps, me, her, and 3 kids who couldn't stop talking. They told me about their dad, how he'd loved Christmas, how he'd always gone overboard with decorations, how last year, when he was sick, he'd still insisted on hanging lights even though he could barely stand. "He made Mom promise we'd always decorate," Emma said, her small voice serious, "so people know we're home." That phrase stuck with me, "so people know we're home." Rebecca caught my expression. Tom believed houses should look lived in, loved. He said dark houses made him sad because it meant nobody inside was celebrating anything. I thought about my own dark house across the street, what it said about me, what message I'd been sending for 15 years. "He sounds like he was a good man," I said quietly. "The best," Rebecca replied, and her kids nodded in solemn agreement. The transformation. It took 3 days to finish their house. What started as hanging a few lights turned into a full production. The kids had opinions about everything, where the wreath should go, how the luminarias should be spaced, whether the inflatable snowman should face left or right. I found myself returning each afternoon, not because the job required it, but because I wanted to. Because Sophie would run out to greet me. Because the twins would show me their school projects. because Rebecca would offer coffee and conversation and make me feel less invisible. On the third day, when we finally plugged everything in at dusk, the kids gasped. Their house glowed. Warm white lights outlined every edge. The wreath sparkled. The snowman waved mechanically in the yard. "It's perfect," Sophie whispered. "Dad would love it." And then she hugged me. This little girl who barely knew me wrapped her arms around my waist and held on tight. I couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged me. The question. That night, as I was packing up my tools, Sophie asked the question that changed everything. "Why doesn't your house have lights?" I froze. Rebecca shot her daughter a look. "Sophie, that's not." "It's okay," I said. I looked at this little girl who'd lost her father but still believed in making houses bright. "I guess I never saw the point." "The point is so people know you're home," Emma said, repeating what she'd told me earlier. "So they know you're celebrating." "But I live alone," I said. "There's nobody to celebrate with." Sophie looked at me like I'd said the silliest thing she'd ever heard. "You could celebrate with us." Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, we could help you decorate." I looked at Rebecca, expecting her to shut this down. Instead, she smiled. "They're right, you helped us. Let us help you." "I don't have any decorations," I protested weakly. "We have extras," Rebecca said. "Tom always bought too much. He'd want someone to use them." Decorating my house. The next Saturday, they invaded my house. All 4 of them, carrying boxes of lights and decorations I hadn't earned, but was being given anyway. Sophie directed like a tiny general. Lights on the roof, wreath on the door, candy canes on the walkway. The twins tested every strand of lights, giggling when they found ones that blinked. Rebecca organized everything with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. And me, I just followed instructions. For the first time in 15 years, my house came alive. We hung lights. We placed a wreath. We set up luminarias identical to theirs. By the time we finished, my house mirrored Rebecca's across the street, 2 beacons of light in the winter darkness. When we plugged everything in that evening, I stood back and stared. My house didn't look empty anymore. It looked like someone lived there, someone who mattered. "Now you're home," Sophie said, taking my hand. She was right. Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, Rebecca invited me over for dinner. "Just casual," she said. "Nothing fancy, but the kids want you there." I almost said no, old habits. But then I thought about my dark house, no, my lit house now, and how it felt less lonely. How I felt less lonely. So I went. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. The kids talked over each other. Someone spilled juice. Noah knocked over a candle, unlit, thankfully. Emma insisted we sing carols off-key. Sophie wanted to hear stories about what Christmas was like when I was young. After the kids went to bed, Rebecca and I sat on her couch drinking eggnog, watching the lights on her tree blink slowly. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping us, for being here." This was the first Christmas I wasn't terrified of. Terrified. Of doing it wrong. Of not being enough without Tom. Of the kids seeing how scared I am. I understood that fear. "You're doing great," I told her. "They're lucky to have you." The years after. That was 3 years ago. Rebecca and I aren't married, nothing like that. But we're family in the way that matters. Every year we decorate our houses together. The kids are older now, Sophie's 10, the twins are 8, but they're just as bossy about where the lights go. We've started a tradition. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, both houses get decorated. Hot chocolate mandatory, crooked lights permitted, laughter required. Other neighbors have joined in. The couple next door asked for help last year. The family down the street the year before that. Our street has become known as the Christmas Street. People drive through slowly to see the lights. But it's not about the decorations, not really. It's about what Sophie said that first day. So people know you're home. I'm home now, not just in a house, but in a community. In a life that includes people who matter. In a place where I'm needed and wanted and seen. All because a little girl asked me to hang some lights. What home really means. People think home is a place. 4 walls, a roof, and a dress, but that's just a house. Home is the people who see you. The ones who ask you to hang lights even though you're a stranger. The ones who notice when your house stays dark and decide to bring their light to you. I was alone for 15 years. I had a house, but I didn't have a home. I went through the motions of living without ever really being alive. I convinced myself I was fine with isolation because admitting I was lonely felt too vulnerable. Then a widow with 3 grieving kids asked me to help hang Christmas lights. They didn't see a grumpy neighbor who refused to decorate. They saw someone who might help, someone who might care, someone who might be just as lonely as they were. And they were right. Home isn't about the building. It's about the moment someone says, "You could celebrate with us," and means it. It's about showing up, being present, letting people see you even when it's scary. The deeper morality, light in the darkness. The truth is, we're all walking around with dark houses. Maybe not literally, but emotionally. We've all got walls we've built, lights we refuse to turn on, invitations we won't extend because vulnerability feels too risky. I told myself for 15 years that I didn't need community. That decorating was frivolous. That staying isolated was just being practical. But isolation isn't practical, it's survival mode. And survival isn't the same as living. Rebecca and her kids were drowning in grief, but they still took the time to notice my darkness. They could have stayed focused on their own pain. God knows they had enough of it. But instead, they looked across the street and saw someone who needed help just as much as they did. That's the real lesson here, the real morality of this story. We are not meant to survive alone. Humans are wired for connection. When we isolate ourselves, whether from grief, pride, fear, or just habit, we're denying a fundamental part of what makes us human. Small acts of inclusion matter immensely. Rebecca didn't save my life with some grand gesture. She just said, "Let us help you." Sophie just asked, "Why doesn't your house have lights?" These tiny moments of seeing and being seen, that's what transforms lives. Grief doesn't disqualify you from generosity. Rebecca had every reason to stay focused on her own family's pain. But she understood something profound. Helping others is how we heal ourselves. When you extend light to someone else's darkness, you illuminate your own path too. Community is built one invitation at a time. Our street didn't become the Christmas street through some organized effort. It happened because one family helped another, and that family helped another, and suddenly people who'd lived near each other for years actually knew each other's names. Being needed is a gift, not a burden. When Sophie asked me to hang lights, she gave me something I'd been missing for years: purpose. The chance to matter to someone. We often think asking for help is taking something from others, but sometimes it's giving them exactly what they need. Home is active, not passive. You don't accidentally create a home. You build it through showing up, participating, caring, and letting yourself be cared for. I had a house for 15 years, but it only became a home when I let people in. Rebecca's late husband Tom believed that houses should look lived in, loved, so people know you're home. But he wasn't really talking about decorations. He was talking about presence, about showing the world that you're not just existing, but living, that you're open to connection, that you're celebrating the gift of being alive, even when life is hard. For 15 years, my dark house told everyone, "Nobody's home, don't bother." Now my lit house says, "Someone's here, someone cares, you're welcome." That's the message we should all be sending. So look around your own life. Where are your dark houses? Where have you refused to hang lights because it felt pointless or scary or too vulnerable? And then ask yourself, what would happen if you let someone help you turn them on? You might find, like I did, that the light doesn't just illuminate your house. It illuminates your entire life. The epilogue to this story: last Christmas, Sophie asked me to walk her down the aisle at her school's winter dance since her dad couldn't. I cried through the entire thing. Emma wants me to teach her to ride a bike this spring. Noah asked if I'd come to his soccer games. Rebecca's teaching me to cook. Apparently living on frozen dinners for 15 years isn't healthy. I'm teaching her basic home repairs. Turns out she's been putting up with a leaky faucet for months. We're family, not by blood but by choice, by showing up. By hanging lights and sharing hot chocolate and noticing each other's darkness and deciding to do something about it. That's what home really means. Not the place you sleep, but the people who make you want to wake up. The ones who see your dark house and bring their lights. The ones who say, "You could celebrate with us," and teach you what it means to finally come home. This Christmas, my house will glow just as bright as Rebecca's. And somewhere across town, families will drive down our street to see the lights. But we'll know the real magic isn't in the decorations. It's in the little girl who asked a lonely stranger to help hang them. And the lonely stranger who finally said yes.